From humiliation to power, the bride who took down an entire empire with grace. Welcome to the channel, where every story carries a spark of truth, transformation, and heart. If you're watching this right now, take a moment to drop a comment and tell us where in the world you're tuning in from. We love hearing your voices from across the globe. And if this story moved you, there's more coming. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the bell because tomorrow's episode will reveal a secret twist you won't want to miss. This journey is just beginning, and we're glad you're here to walk it with us. The morning sun cast a soft glow over Manhattan's Fifth Avenue as Emily Hartman stepped out of her rideshare, her hand gripping the strap of her worn leather tote. It was 10:57 a.m., just in time for her 11 o'clock bridal fitting at Maison Aurelia, one of the city's most exclusive couture boutiques. Dressed in beige linen culottes and a crisp white blouse, Emily looked effortless, grounded. Her flats were scuffed at the toes, her hair pulled into a low bun. She didn't look like the other brides-to-be who walked into that boutique. No diamonds, no glam squad, no entourage. Just her, a dream, and an appointment she'd scheduled 6 months ago. As she entered, a bell chimed softly. The boutique was a cathedral of luxury, white marble floors, glass chandeliers, and racks of gowns that sparkled like snow under stage lights. Behind the counter stood Tracy Monroe, the boutique manager, poised in a sleek black dress, her nails the color of Cabernet. Emily smiled politely and said, "Hi, I'm here for my fitting. Emily Hartman, 11, oh." She pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward Tracy, revealing the confirmation email, the boutique's logo gleaming at the top. Tracy's eyes flicked from the screen to Emily's outfit. A smirk curled at the corners of her mouth. "I'm sorry, there must be a mistake," she said, her voice sugary sweet but laced with venom. "Our gowns start at $80,000. This is a private atelier." From across the room, 3 young assistants glanced up, Jenna, Brielle, and Sloane, their glossy hair and designer shoes screaming privilege. Jenna leaned in, her voice a stage whisper. "Did she steal someone's email? Happens all the time." Emily didn't flinch. Her voice was calm, like a still lake before a storm. "There's no mistake," she said. "I placed my order 6 months ago. Custom design, ivory silk, diamond embroidery." But Tracy wasn't listening. She crossed her arms, nails tapping against her elbow. "Sweetheart, we don't do walk-ins and we definitely don't do..." She gestured loosely at Emily's pants, her nose wrinkling like she'd smelled something foul. Sloane snorted, scrolling through a tablet. Never heard of an Emily Hartman, probably another wannabe using a fake name. Meanwhile, Brielle had already started filming, her phone angled just right. "This is gold," she whispered. The caption typed across her screen read, "Stranger in clearance clothes crashes bridal boutique." Emily stood still. She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She simply said, "I'd like to speak to the manager." Tracy let out a laugh so sharp it cut through the silence. "Darling, I am the manager," she said, "and you're not on our list. Let's not make a scene." With a nod, Jenna stepped forward, flanking Emily like she was a trespasser. Though no one touched her, the message was clear. She was being ushered out. Emily turned toward the velvet curtain, her tote still hanging at her side. Her face stayed serene, but her silence echoed louder than any scream. The door closed behind her, but her story was just beginning. 2 days later, the internet was still buzzing. The video Brielle posted had gone viral. Millions watched Emily Hartman, labeled the clearance crasher, being dismissed from a boutique she had every right to enter. The comments were cruel, the memes relentless. Her beige pants were photoshopped onto red carpet disasters. Her name turned into a hashtag. Emily embarrassed. But Emily said nothing. She didn't post a response, didn't correct the lies. She simply packed her bags and flew across the country, Napa. Valley was glowing that morning. Sunlight danced across the vineyards, and a light breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine through the air. The estate was called Ashbourne Hall, a secluded 17th-century chateau nestled in the hills. It had been transformed for what insiders were calling the wedding of the year. Cameron Whitmore, the 32-year-old heir to Whitmore Media, a tech and entertainment empire worth over $40 billion, was tying the knot. No one had seen the bride, not even the guests. The press had been completely shut out. Rumors swirled that she was a princess, a model, a Silicon Valley ghost investor. No one knew the truth, but everyone who was anyone had been invited. And that included Tracy Monroe, Jenna, Brielle, and Sloane, the same quartet who had laughed Emily out of Maison Aurelia just 48 hours earlier. They strutted into the estate's courtyard dressed to impress. Tracy in sapphire velvet, Jenna in fiery red, Brielle streaming everything live, already gathering thousands of viewers. They didn't see her at first. Emily walked through the arched gates in a simple sleeveless dress. Linen again. Her flats, still worn, kicked up tiny clouds of dust from the cobblestone. Her hair was loose, her face bare. No jewelry, no glam squad, just her. Brielle gasped so loud people turned. "No way," she hissed, "and it's her, the beige girl." Jenna squinted. "She's really here. Again, is she stalking rich people now?" Phones came out, cameras rolled. Laughter bubbled from the crowd like champagne. "She's crashing." "The wedding," someone shouted. "Did she pack anything that cost more than $30?" Emily didn't flinch. She walked past them, slow, steady. A waiter offered her champagne. She politely declined. Her gaze moved across the garden, catching every stare, every whisper, and holding her ground like stone against a tide. Then Priya, Nair, a tech heiress draped in gold, stepped forward, pointing a manicured nail straight at Emily. "Security," she called. "She's back, and she's not invited." A guard, tall in a black suit with a buzz cut, approached. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice neutral, "I need to ask you to leave." Emily looked up at him, her voice soft but firm. "Ask Cameron," she said. "He'll clear it." "Up," the crowd laughed. Tracy shook her head, smug. "You think you're marrying him now?" But the guard paused, her words sticking like a splinter, and then the music faltered. Every head turned, because what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that Emily wasn't crashing the wedding. She was walking into her own. The murmurs grew louder as the music came to a halt. In the courtyard of Ashbourne Hall, luxury paused. Waiters froze mid-pour, the string quartet fell silent, and the elite crowd, draped in designer silk and ego, turned as one toward the grand doors of the estate. Then they opened. The hush was instant. Emily Hartman stood in the archway, but this time she wasn't wearing linen. She wasn't in flats or a clearance rack blouse. She wore a gown, the one Maison Aurelia had refused to let her try on. Diamond embroidery shimmered under candlelight, the ivory silk catching every breath of wind like it had its pulse. A delicate train flowed behind her, weightless and regal, and at her side, holding her arm, stood Cameron Whitmore. The gasps rippled across the crowd like thunder. The influencers, Tracy, Jenna, Brielle, Sloane, stood frozen. Tracy's champagne flute slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble. Brielle's livestream, still rolling, jumped to 100,000 viewers in seconds. Comments flooded in. "She's the bride? Wait, is that the beige girl?" "No way." Cameron guided Emily toward the altar with calm precision, his expression unreadable. When they reached the front, he turned to the guests and raised a hand, steady, commanding. "I know many of you are confused," he said, his voice low but firm. "Let me clear it up." He looked at Emily, his eyes softening for a breath. Then he turned back to the crowd, his words landing like hammer strikes. "This is Emily Hartman. She's my fiancée. We've been engaged for 2 years. We planned this day in private, not to create buzz, but to protect what matters." Gasps. Again. Whispered curses. Tracy's face had drained of color. Cameron continued. "Some of you mocked her, livestreamed her, called her names, judged her by her shoes, her clothes, her silence. You thought she didn't belong." He paused, scanning the crowd. No one met his eyes. "But what none of You knew, he said, his tone sharpening. Is that Emily is also the founder and CEO of Heart. Yes, the fashion tech company whose designs you've worn without even realizing. The brand that redefined digital couture in the last 5 years. The brand worth $10 billion, preparing to go public next month. The silence turned into stunned disbelief. And as of yesterday, he added, she's also the majority owner of Maison Aurelia. Jaws dropped. Jenna stumbled back. Sloane burst into tears. Emily stood tall, her posture regal, her face calm. She didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She didn't need to. Cameron looked back at her like she was the only truth in a room full of noise. She didn't crash this wedding, he said, voice rising just slightly. She built the runway it walks on. The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in stunned awe, and Emily Hartman, once mocked as the beige girl, had become the most unforgettable bride they'd ever seen. For a moment, no one moved. Emily stood at the altar, radiant in her diamond-stitched gown, and Cameron's words still echoed through the grand hall. She didn't crash this wedding. She built the runway it walks on. The silence stretched, thick with disbelief. Then, from the back of the crowd, a commotion began. A woman in a gray tailored suit stepped forward, sharp-eyed, tablet in hand. Elena Ruiz, Emily's chief of staff, and the engine behind the empire. She didn't smile, she didn't blink. She simply said, "Cameron, I have the list." He nodded. "Name them." Elena's voice cut through the room like glass through silk. Tracy Monroe, boutique manager at Maison Aurelia. Jenna Briggs, Brielle Hastings, and Sloane Carter, for orchestrating and live-streaming Emily's humiliation. Gasps, whispers. A chair scraped the marble as Tracy stood up, face pale. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding," she stammered. "I didn't know who she was." "That's the problem," Elena said coldly. "You didn't need to know her name to treat her with dignity." Guards stepped forward. Tracy's voice rose in panic. "I built Aurelia! You can't do this!" As they took her by the arms, her sapphire gown snagged on a table leg and ripped at the seam, the sound sharp and cruel. She stumbled, mascara streaking down her cheeks as the cameras followed every step. Brielle's phone was still live, her stream now at 250,000 viewers. "Stop filming me," she screamed, just as security confiscated her device and escorted her out. The audience watched in stunned silence, as each name Elena read was matched by a swift removal. Jenna sobbed. Sloane clung to her clutch like it could stop her from being dragged away. One by one they were led through the doors, their designer heels clicking against the tile like the final ticks of a countdown clock. Then came the influencers. Haley King, Lance Dalton, Priya Nair, for participating in the harassment and public shaming of Emily Hartman during a private event, Elena continued. Priya gasped. "You can't be serious. I didn't even know who she was." "You threw wine on her dress," Elena replied. "Security." Haley tried to protest, but no one was listening. Lance turned to run, only to find another guard waiting at the exit. The crowd parted as the last of them were marched out, each one silenced by the weight of their own arrogance. And as they were escorted past the marble statues and white lilies, the press outside caught every second. Cameras flashing, headlines already forming. Aurelia manager expelled by hidden fashion mogul. Influencers blacklisted after humiliating bride. Inside, the room began to shift. Whispers turned to apologies. Guests looked at Emily differently now, not as the woman in beige, but as the visionary who just flipped the fashion world on its head. She hadn't just walked down the aisle. She'd walked her enemies straight to the door. And they'd never forget it. The hall slowly settled. Tracy was gone. Brielle, Jenna, Sloane, all of them. The self-proclaimed tastemakers, the ones who had mocked Emily just days before, now exiled from the very world they tried to gatekeep. Outside, reporters swarmed like bees to scandal, cameras flashing, headlines already going live. But inside Ashbourne Hall, beneath the crystal chandeliers and the hushed buzz of stunned whispers, Emily Hartman stood tall at the altar. She hadn't shed a single tear, not when they laughed, not when they threw wine, Not even when they called her a joke, because she knew this moment would come. Cameron turned to her, his hand gently squeezing hers. But it was Emily who stepped forward, her gown catching the candlelight, her voice soft but strong, cutting through the silence with a grace more powerful than fury. "This isn't about revenge," she said, scanning the room. It never was. The audience leaned in, breath held. "It's about respect," she continued. "It's about the thousands of women who walk into rooms every day and get sized up by their shoes instead of their stories, judged by the cut of their coat instead of the content of their character." Her eyes passed over the remaining guests, stylists, editors, designers, influencers, many of whom had stayed silent when it mattered most. "I built Hart in a Brooklyn studio apartment," she said, her voice steady. "With no investors, no legacy name, just talent, belief, and a laptop on a folding table. I didn't wear the right brands, I didn't post the right filters, but I knew my worth, even when no one else did." Gasps rippled. Even the string quartet seemed frozen. Emily continued, her voice rising, not shouting but lifting like a tide. "We're merging with Maison Aurelia," she said, "not to destroy it, but to transform it. From this moment forward, we design. For every woman, not just the ones who can walk into a showroom and afford silence. No more gatekeeping, no more cruelty masked as curation." One tear rolled down Margot's cheek, one of the few boutique staffers who had said, "I'm sorry," when it still mattered. Emily caught her gaze and smiled gently. "You don't need to know someone's name," she said, "to choose kindness." The room exhaled, the weight of those words pressing deep into hearts. At the back of the hall, Elena's tablet pinged. Stock in Hart had surged 20% since the announcement. Investors were rallying. The world was watching, and this time it was cheering. The candles flickered, and the music began again. Father Julian, the officiant, stepped forward, opening the ceremony with reverence. Beneath a canopy of stars, Emily and Cameron exchanged vows, not as symbols of status, but as partners in purpose. Later, as lanterns glowed over the garden reception, Emily stood near the fountain, her train trailing, like moonlight. Cameron brushed a strand of hair from her cheek and whispered, "You changed the game." She smiled. "No," she said, eyes blazing, "we did." And just like that, the girl once mocked for wearing beige became the face of a new era, one stitched in dignity, driven by heart. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a time you were underestimated, overlooked, or judged for the way you looked instead of who you truly are, then we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share where you're watching from. And if you've ever experienced something similar, your voice matters here. Too often, people are dismissed without ever being given a chance. Emily Hartman's story isn't just about fashion or wealth. It's about the quiet strength it takes to walk through humiliation with your head high, to speak with grace when others are shouting, and to prove your worth without needing to explain yourself. Have you ever had to rise above someone else's assumptions? Have you ever been underestimated, only to later prove them wrong? Or maybe you witnessed someone being treated unfairly and wished you had spoken up. Take a moment, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's make this more than a video. Let's make it a conversation, because kindness, dignity, and second chances shouldn't be rare. They should be the standard. We're reading every word, and we're walking this journey with you.